Hi, and welcome back to Focal Point AFR Talk. Brian Fisher is my name, free for all Friday. We'll open up the phones here before too long. And just going back to Eric Shinseki just for a moment on the veterans. Jay Carney is gone. I mentioned I have no idea how the guy did it for as long as he did. I couldn't do it for 2 days, ladies and gentlemen. I could not do it. I could not go out there, misrepresent, distort, lie, cover up, avoid. I could not do that for 2 days, let alone day in and day out for year after year after year. And it doesn't surprise me that he just kind of burned out. I mean, the sprockets just burned out. He went into vapor lock, boom, and he's done. And that's just amazing to me that he lasted as long as he did. Now, with regard to Shinseki stepping down from the veterans thing, the deal is this is not going to make any difference whatsoever. He's just a scapegoat. President Obama is looking for somebody to pin all of this on, somebody to serve as a scapegoat, to blame for what's gone wrong, because firing Shinseki will simply do nothing about any of this. I mean, we know now from the Inspector General's report there were 1,700 veterans down in Phoenix that were not even on a wait list. I mean, they weren't even included on the wait list. They weren't anywhere. They weren't on a paper wait list. They weren't on a electronic wait list. They just were being ignored because the VA just wasn't in a position to handle them. But here's the point I want to make. Look, the problem with the VA is not Eric Shinseki. He's not the problem. The problem is government-run healthcare. That's the problem. The problem is government-run, single-payer healthcare. This is exactly what you get. Now, maybe it's unfortunate for Shinseki that it happened on his watch, that all of this bubbled to the surface. I mean, he was toast. I mean, it was obvious for the last week that he had to go. No way he was going to survive whatsoever. So you knew that his days were numbered. But this is empty and futile. I mean, it probably was the right move. Probably needed to be made. But Shinseki was not the problem. The problem was not Eric Shinseki, is how you say his name. The problem is government trying to run healthcare. And that's what's alarming about what we're seeing at the VA is what we're seeing at the VA is exactly what we are going to experience under Obamacare. This is just a precursor, a preview of Obamacare to come. So realize, look, if we're having this much trouble, and I think Ben Carson said this the other day, he said, look, if we're having these kind of problems trying to take care of 9 million veterans, what's going to happen when the government tries to provide health care for 315 million Americans? It just simply cannot work. It's not possible for it to work. And don't forget, and everybody says, there's big differences between the VA and Obamacare. Obamacare is all private. Everybody's getting their insurance through private. Of course, that's everybody, but those that are on Medicare and Medicaid, which is a number that's growing by the day. But the problem with that comparison is that what the liberals, like Nancy Pelosi has been saying, look, what we need to do to fix Obamacare is we need to go to single payer. That's what Nancy Pelosi is saying. That is the solution. The solution is single payer. We just gummed it up trying to keep private enterprise involved in this, trying to keep private healthcare companies involved. We just gummed the whole thing up. If we were going to fix this thing, what we'd have to do is go to single payer. Because single payer is one of those things in the minds of liberals, it sounds perfect. You've got one bureaucracy overseeing everything. So it's all centralized. It's all streamlined. Everybody pays into it, and then people are paid out based on their medical need. It sounds simple. It sounds clean. It sounds straightforward. But it doesn't work. It never has worked. It never can work. And it never will work. So if government-run single-payer health care was the answer, then the Veterans Administration ought to be paradise on earth. This ought to be a walking utopia of health care because it's government-run. It's the Veterans Administration. Everybody that's in charge of the VA is a government bureaucrat. They work for the federal government. Everybody that provides services in the VA works for the government. They get paid by the government. And it's single payer. Government pays for everything. Government reimburses hospitals for whatever. So it's government run, it is single payer, and it's an absolute total and utter disaster. Dozens up to hundreds of people dying because they simply did not get access to care. It was delayed so long that they died. And they had this bonus system in place based on treatment times. So for these VA administrators, it was actually a break for them when somebody died because they could cross them off the wait list. Well, we don't have to count for him. He's dead. He couldn't show up for an appointment even if we had one for him. So they just lose the name. It's just crossed off the list, and their batting average goes up, and then they become eligible for these bonuses. I mean, it's an absolutely, totally obscene kind of arrangement, but that's what you get. That's why, that's why getting rid of Shinseki is not going to do anything whatsoever. It's just a Band-Aid. It's just pasting, something superficial, just a thin coat of veneer. The solution is you just have to get rid of the VA. The solution is you got to get rid of government-run health care. There are a number of legislators coming forward, and this is the direction that we ought to go in the future. I mean, we got to take care of the veterans that are in the system. Don't misunderstand me. I'm not talking about stranding anybody, but I'm talking about the younger guys that are in the military now and are going to be leaving the military. What we ought to do for them is provide a voucher for them so they can go purchase their own health insurance to take care of whatever issues that they've got. And if you have clear proof that it's a physical ailment, a physical condition, long-term condition that's directly related to military service, wounds sustained in combat and so forth, then yeah, you take that into consideration. We need to make sure that our veterans are taken care of. But that's the problem. Right now, their needs are not being taken care of. We're not getting that job done, and it's because you just can't get that job done by depending on a government service. So I want our veterans to get the best health care that they possibly can, and that has always been in the private sector. That's where the access is the best. That's where the prices are lowest because of the competition. Let's give them vouchers so they can go buy their own health care, pick their own doctors, pick their own hospitals, pick the care that suits them the best. And, of course, that means you got to dismantle Obamacare. You got to get rid of that monstrosity, too, so there actually is a private market where there is competition. Now, let's play a couple of Obama soundbites while we're in the neighborhood. Grab clip number 4, Rob. Speaking of healthcare, President Obama convened this concussion summit yesterday at the White House trying to get to the bottom of concussions. Remember, President Obama was the guy that said, I would not, even though my son would look like Trayvon Martin, I would not let him play football. Now, here is President Obama, clip 4.
Before the awareness was out there, when I was young and played football briefly, there were a couple times where I'm sure that ringing sensation in my head and the needing to sit down for a while might have been a mild concussion, and at the time you didn't think anything of it. The awareness is improved today, but not by much. So the total number of young people who are impacted by this early on is probably bigger than we know. Now, I say this not to scare people. We want our kids participating in sports. I'd be much more troubled if young people were shying away from sports.
Now, I don't know if President Obama realizes exactly what he was doing here. This was a very dangerous admission for him to make. Remember, Bill Clinton talked about the fact that when Hillary suffered her concussion, it took her 6 months of arduous therapy to overcome that. Now, I still am of the opinion that Bill Clinton was actually trying to sabotage Hillary Clinton's candidacy in 2016. I don't think Bill wants to share the glory with Hillary. He knows that his star will be eclipsed. He is still a rock star in the Democratic Party. He is a demigod in the Democratic Party, despite all of his foibles, despite his philandering. President Obama's gone. I mean, he's going to make a boatload of money giving speeches when he retires, and his memoirs will fetch a boatload of money. He's going to be set for life, so nobody's going to need to worry about him. But he's not going to be the rock star that Bill Clinton is today. And I think Bill Clinton doesn't want to have his star eclipsed. I think he knows he's the rock star in the Democratic Party. He knows that Barack Obama's star is fading. Doesn't want to be eclipsed by his own wife. So I think that business about, You know, and you look up the definition of a concussion in a medical dictionary, it's a brain injury. It is some kind of injury, some kind of trauma to the brain. Trauma, I think, is the right word. It's brain trauma. That's what a concussion is. So President Obama is admitting that he was a victim of brain trauma, and he had a ringing sensation in his head. Now, what's the whole point of the NFL and this concussion deal they made with all these veterans who now are roughly President Obama's age? These veterans are coming forward and say, our brains have been permanently damaged by the concussions we have suffered. We need $765 million to compensate us for the damage that was done to our brains. How? By suffering concussions playing football, which is exactly what President Obama just admitted to the nation. And the other thing, Jeff and Rob and Wesley, I'm curious, any three of you, I mean, I have never heard one single solitary time about President Obama ever playing football. I mean, we know he played basketball. We know he's on his high school basketball team. We've seen him go, 0 for 21 out on the hoop outside the White House. But and I'm just asking, Jeff, have you ever heard that President Obama ever played football? Have you ever heard that before?
Never. Basketball is it. And judging by his first pitch, I don't think he was much of a baseball player either.
Speaking of first pitch, did you see what 50 Cent did the other day?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah, did him, didn't he?
Oh, if you guys haven't seen 50 Cent, go to YouTube, look up 50 Cent first pitch. That, if anything, that's the only first pitch I've ever seen that is worse than the one that President Obama threw. And Rob, let me ask you this. Rob, have you ever heard or read anywhere that President Obama ever played football in his life?
No, I've not. That's a first for me.
Well, you know, and I just wonder, I mean, you know, this is the guy that was responsible for the lie of the year. PolitiFact said the lie of the year. You like your insurance, you can keep it. You know, so I don't know. Maybe he did. Maybe he just made this up. Maybe he lied on the fly. Who knows?
Sounds like he could be Pop Warner or something.
Yeah, maybe Pop Warner. That could be. But he was a pretty spindly kid. And I'd be surprised that he'd go out for football given his build at the time. Anyway, Focal Point AFR Talk, 888-589-8840. Give us a call, 888